Hi, thanks for tuning in. This video is about the 2D isometric games and how I'm dealing with Z sorting. One of the big issues with 2D isometric in general is getting the sorting right between dynamic moving objects and our static ones. We're able to dynamically sort the layering with just a few lines of code, but there are several catches that can cause issues and we have to develop our systems around that. Commonly, you can use inbuilt features of Unity's tile maps to sort via the y-axis, where the higher the y value of the transform, the lower in the rendering order the image will be. The catch here is that the y value is taken from the pivot or centre of the sprite, and when you're dealing with tile maps you can often get batches or chunking, which then collates all the tile locations into one transform, treating each wall section as one bigger image, and this can cause clipping issues where your character won't properly position itself. Setting the tile map to individual helps you by making each wall segment its own sprite, but then you must ensure that your pivot is in the centre of the grid position for the best result. You can do this by manually adjusting the pivot position in the sprite, and it's made easier if you can visualise what the particular segment would look like in 3D space, and even easier if all your tile sprites share a rigid structure for width and height. But this method still has its flaws, particularly if we have a dynamic sprite that can move freely in the world space, because we take the y-axis of the static sprite against the dynamic one, and as soon as the dynamic sprite's transform has the slightest shift in the y value, it will either be in front or behind, and depending on the bounds of each sprite, you're going to get a popping effect or overlap. This is a problem that won't go away with this setup. You pretty much have to work around it by creating a collision system that prevents the dynamic sprite from coming too close to the static sprite to eliminate the chance of this issue occurring. But that can often be difficult to manage when you want to have small walkways or sometimes doorways where you don't have much space to play with. Alternatively, you can keep the Y sorting method but adjust the way in which the dynamic sprites are moving. By locking the movement into a rigid grid position, you can eliminate the chance of the sprite moving into a region that causes this clipping effect. An added bonus of using a grid-based movement system is that you can eliminate the need for colliders for the simple movement tasking. Instead, you can utilise an extension of tile data to determine if the tile is traversable or not, and simply check the tile space prior to movement. Extending it this way also allows you to check for other values and variances, such as occupied by wall, a locked door, or another entity. It also opens up the possibility for data tracking and logging of your world space by appending transform values to a grid, as opposed to the floats in a Vector 3.